All right, so I have JORI EPSTEIN, USA Today NFL sports reporter with me today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Max.
So last year you were at the Super Bowl, right?
Correct.
So you actually got to see Patrick Mahomes get his first Super Bowl victory. What would you say the keys were to him winning there that you saw in person?
Yeah, it's funny. When we had to make our predictions last year, I predicted the Chiefs to win, and I was a little bit questioning my plan because I'm like, the 49ers really have a good plan. But there's something about Patrick Mahomes and his clutch gene that is so true. And we saw that with those, I think it was 21 straight points in the fourth quarter. So I would say it's really about, can Mahomes seal it off at the end? Because sometimes, like we saw this year in the championship game, he pulls out to that lead. But other times, they had a lot of games this season that were really close. And even so, you never feel like we're counting Mahomes out of the game.
So what would you say role Andy Reid plays? So we've seen his playbook, the absolutely obnoxious Kenny and Ziggy's looking menu. What do you think role he plays in Patrick Mahomes' success as the Chiefs quarterback?
Yeah, I think he does it. One of my colleagues wrote a piece this week on the play calls, and I love all the names from like smoked sausage to wasp. And I think what he was saying was it doesn't matter if it's someone like Patrick Mahomes or their quarterbacks coach Mike Kafka, their coordinator Eric Bieniemy. Everyone is just saying, "Well, how about this?" Or "I saw this on someone's film. Can we incorporate that?" And I think what Andy does, and Erica as well, but Andy is great at taking it all together and finding a way to really play to his players' skill sets.
This actually today you reported that there were two players who are currently on a COVID watch list: wide receiver Demarcus Robinson and center Daniel Kilgone. Do you think that they're going to be able to play? And if not, what difference do you think those two players might make?
Yeah, great question. So my understanding is they did not test positive, but they were close contacts, so they landed on the COVID list. And so the rules, if you test negative, is if you can test negative for 5 straight days, you can return. But if you test positive, you'll have to go into a longer isolation. So given that they were placed on the COVID list Monday, and Andy Reid told us that they got this news on Sunday, they can return by this coming Sunday for the Super Bowl as long as they test negative every day. If they don't return, I mean, it's definitely depth that guys are losing. And I asked Travis Kelsey on Monday, I said, look, I mean, what would it be like? Are you guys doing anything different COVID protocol wise to make sure you don't get it? And he almost got emotional and was kind of trailing off because he said, I just can't imagine missing this game because of COVID. So I think guys are going to be extra careful. But even so, as Andy Reid said when I asked him, it's hard to see germs and they're kind of fighting this invisible force. So there's a decent chance that they can make it back, but they're going to have to hope that they weren't exposed long enough to eventually test positive.
So you mentioned Travis Kelsey, and I saw a statement actually from Rob Gronkowski today about how Travis Kelsey has in many ways transformed the tight end position, although I'd argue Rob Gronkowski has done too. What do you think of that matchup between Travis Kelsey and Rob Gronkowski and the importance of those two tight ends in the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I think they're huge. I think we've seen what Gronk can do for Tom Brady, particularly in Super Bowl and playoff games for years. And just knowing that he's got that reliable threat, they know each other's games so well, is really just always something that you have to look out for. You can never have a defense take a playoff from guarding Gronk. And I think Travis Kelsey has become the same. I want to say it was a couple games ago. He had 13 receptions, which set a playoff record. So he's always, both of them are super reliable. You don't know if they're going to be blocking, pass catching, or both in the same play. And they're really creating mismatches. And yeah, I would agree with you. I think they both changed the game. And they also both play with energy that is just so much fun to watch.
And then we can't talk about the Super Bowl without talking about Tom Brady and the Bucks. And in the last 3 years, they went 7-9, 5-11, 5-11, and then this year they went 11-5. How has Brady transformed that team, and how much credit do you think he deserves versus the organization as a whole, kind of transforming with him?
Yeah, it's funny. I remember when Bruce Arians at the end of the 2019 season last year was asked about, could this franchise win without Jameis Winston, who had played well from a touchdown standpoint, but also thrown 30 interceptions. And he said, well, if we can win with him, we can win without him, which you can always count on Bruce Arians for a great quote. But hey, they're in the Super Bowl now. It turns out they sure could win without him. I think they had a lot of young talent. And yes, Brady's quarterback play and understanding of defenses and ability to capitalize on them helps, but just as much, if not more, in my opinion, Brady knows how to teach guys. He knows how to bring them up. He's teaching them how to win. And some of these little things that really add up. And Gronk told us that today. He was like, Brady is a coach as much as he's a player, and he'll stop practice and say, here's how to do this and here's how to do that. And Bruce Arians gives him the leeway to do that. And I think that that makes a difference when you have a guy who's one of your peers, but also has that level of knowledge.
Do you think that if Tom Brady wins the Super Bowl, he might call it quits, or you think he's going to be back next year? Have you heard anything?
I think he'll be back next year. I don't have any specific reporting on it, but I mean, he's still in great shape. He only got better as the year went on. I feel like usually the reasons guys would retire are they feel like they have nothing else to give to the game or they don't want to be there anymore. And I think that physically and mentally he wants to be there and he's capable of being there. Sure, he's had some off games this year, particularly at the beginning of the season when he was adjusting to Arians' scheme. But this is not a guy who's starting to tail off.
So another thing, so this will be obviously the first Super Bowl to happen during the coronavirus pandemic, and they've announced that they're going to be at about 30% capacity, about 22,000 seats, which means there will be some crowd noise, but it certainly won't be like a previous Super Bowl. And this is also the first time that a home team is actually playing in their home stadium in a Super Bowl. How do you think that crowd noise could have an impact? Do you think it will have an impact on the game?
Yeah, I think it was so last week when the Buccaneers, or last game 2 weeks ago, when the Buccaneers played at the Packers, and I want to say the Packers had something like 7 or 8,000 fans, which is significantly less than 22,000. And both sides agreed they felt they were loud enough. They might as well have been 70,000. So I think 22,000 fans can make a lot of noise. I think it will be interesting. Certainly, you would think there would be a lot of Buccaneers fans there just because they don't even have to travel. On the other hand, I think Chiefs probably have a more avid fan base in the last few years, particularly with Patrick Mahomes. So I think that it'll add to the fun of the game. They can pump in crowd noise if they want, although I doubt that they will need to. I don't think it'll drastically change, though. Most of these teams at this point, even if they didn't play with much noise at the beginning of the season, like the Buccaneers really saw what that noise was like in Green Bay, and the Chiefs had fans of there all year. So I don't expect it to factor in heavily, but I think it will add to the entertainment value.
And then what do you think the keys are for the Chiefs to pull out a victory and for the Bucks to pull out a victory? What does each team need to do?
Yeah, I think for the Buccaneers, Tom Brady needs to not turn the ball over. He got really lucky in the conference championship that when he had 3 interceptions on 3 straight possessions, that Green Bay didn't capitalize more than they did. I think that defense, I mean, it's kind of the same type of thing, but that defense has been really scrappy this postseason, getting turnovers. And so if they can do that against Mahomes, that will bode well for them, but it's much harder to do against the Chiefs. And then the third for the Buccaneers would probably be on defense, just dialing up some of those blitzes and finding a way to outsmart Andy Reid and the offense, which is very difficult. And the Chiefs are kind of the flip of that in many ways. But for Patrick Mahomes, I think that one is he's going to have to overcome the loss. So his left tackle last game, I believe, tore his Achilles, and he already is missing his right tackle. So he's going to have to be super mobile, and guys are going to have to step up to give him that protection. I would say, two, similar to the Bucks, that defense is really going to need to force Tom Brady to make the mistakes that he has shown he's willing to risk and make. And then 3, I think that the Chiefs just need to have a little bit of fun, because I think that they play best when they're having fun. And so if they get too caught up, which I don't expect them to, then they can't win, which I think they will.
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce certainly, and Tyreek Hill, they all bring that energy.
Yes.
And then the last thing, got to ask it, what's your prediction? Who do you got? What's the score?
I'm going Chiefs 31-27. I think that it will be a well-matched game, and Brady never lets you go out early or easy in the Super Bowl, but Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs have a more complete team and something special, and I think we'll see that on Sunday.
All righty, we'll see what happens. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Max.